Genesis 32. Now Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Then Jacob said when he saw them, "This is God's camp." So he named that place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He also commanded them, saying, "Thus you shall say to my lord, to Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban, and have been delayed until now. And I have oxen and donkeys and flocks and male and female slaves, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight." Then the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother, to Esau, and furthermore, he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels, into 2 camps. And he said, "If Esau comes to the one camp and strikes it, then the camp which remains will escape." And Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Yahweh, who said to me, 'Return to your land and to your kin, and I will prosper you,' I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and of all the truth which you have shown to your slave. For with my staff only I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me down with the mothers and the children. For you said, I will surely prosper you and make your seed as the sand of the sea, which is too great to be numbered." So he spent the night there. Then he took from what he had with him a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. And he gave them into the hand of his servants, every flock by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass on before me and put a space between flocks." And he commanded the first one in front, saying, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and to whom do these animals in front of you belong?' then you shall say, 'These belong to your servant Jacob. It is a present sent to my lord, to Esau, and behold, he also is behind us.'" Then he commanded also the second and the third, and all those who followed the flock, saying, "After this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him, and you shall say, 'Behold, your servant Jacob also is behind us, for he said, I will appease his face when the present that goes before me. Then afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will lift up my face.'" So the present passed on before him, and he himself spent that night in the camp. And he arose that same night, and took his 2 wives and his 2 servant women, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. And he took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of dawn. And he saw that he had not prevailed against him, so he touched the socket of his thigh, and so the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been delivered." And the sun rose upon him just as he crossed over Peniel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore to this day the sons of Israel do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh in the sinew of the hip. I think we can understand Jacob's wrestling match by examining how Jacob understood the scene. He realizes that the person he's wrestling with is able to bless him. In fact, Jacob desperately insists that the man bless him. Even though Jacob's thigh was dislocated, he apparently still held on to this man until he was blessed by this man. And then we learn that Jacob understood that the person he was wrestling with was God himself. Verse 30, Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been delivered. This is similar to chapter 16. If we remember Hagar, in Genesis 16 verse 13, she called the name of Yahweh who spoke to her, You are a God who sees. For she said, Have I even remained alive here after seeing him? In her context, she was running away from a difficult family situation with her mistress, Sarai. And then in chapter 32, with Jacob's situation, he was afraid and distressed because he was about to encounter a difficult family situation with his brother Esau. Both times, God showed up, and with both Hagar and Jacob, it was a similar response. They found it incredible that they were still alive. For Hagar, she said, Have I even remained alive here after seeing him? For Jacob, he says in chapter 32, verse 30, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been delivered. Both people were in a place where they were able to acknowledge God's mercy. They were also empowered by God's blessing. They were both in desperate situations. Hagar was at the mercy of Sarai. Jacob was at the mercy of Esau. But it was the mercy of God that they needed. Jacob in verse 7 was greatly afraid and distressed that he would not have his brother's blessing and his brother's mercy. But Jacob did the right thing. Starting in verse 9, he turned his attention to God and prayed. He humbled himself, saying in verse 10, I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and of all the truth which you have shown to your slave. And he prays to God to deliver him. And so God shows up. He is now strengthened by God spiritually. Physically, he was humbled. Verse 31, he was limping on his thigh. But in reality, he was blessed. He experiences humility. He receives God's mercy. And he receives a new identity from God. Verse 28, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. His whole perspective has changed. The most important thing to him was no longer his brother's acceptance, his brother's mercy, his brother's blessing. He instead was passionate about God's blessing, thankful for God's mercy, and settled in his new identity given to him by God. We know that after Hagar experiences the mercy and the blessing of God, she was able to go back and face her mistress Sarai as she ought to. Now will Jacob be able to face his brother Esau as he ought to? We will see. These are my thoughts. Hope to hear from you as well.